my whole life, it was like achieve so that you could prove that you are okay, that you are of a
Mhm.
sound mind, that you are intelligent. Because I felt so deeply, I felt like I needed to counter that to prove, hey, nothing's wrong
Yeah,
with me. And so I
right. And the
burdened,
intelligence. Yeah.
yeah, I burdened over the years my goals and my perfectionism and my dedication and my
Mm.
nature as a person with the task of proving my worth.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the Terry Cole Show. Just had a great interview with a new pal. Her name is Najwa Zebian. She's written many books. She is from Lebanon. We had a whole conversation about belonging and about being on the outside and being on the inside. The name of the book is The Only Constant, A Guide to Embracing Change and Leading an Authentic Life. And that really is what we talked about. How do you manage situations when changes happen that you wouldn't choose? Someone breaks up with you, you have a loss, and she's basically given us her advice. She really is a true believer in the power of words for lasting and transformative change, like both internally and as a collective. She's the author of other acclaimed works as well, Mind, Platter, and Welcome Home, among a bunch of other stuff. She's a poet. She does advocacy work. We really had a wonderful conversation, and I hope that you enjoy my conversation with Nedra as much as I enjoyed having it. Well, hello there. I am super excited to welcome my new pal to the show, Najwa Zebian. Did we say that correctly?
Yes, we did.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the show, my dear.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this ever since I first saw you actually on Lisa Bilyeu's Women of Impact. I immediately felt like we're going to have a conversation one day. So it's happening.
That is correct. This is the day.
Yes.
So you have lots of exciting things happening in your world. You just had a new book come out
Hmm.
called The Only Constant, A Guide to Embracing
Yes.
Change and Leading an Authentic Life. I love it. Ooh, look how pretty that cover
Hmm.
is. I love it.
Thank you.
So why don't we start with, I love a backstory. I love a Marvel origin story, as
Okay.
they say. So tell us a little bit about, I know you're from Lebanon, like tell us a little bit about your story and
Hmm.
what inspired you to become a writer.
So, my story in a nutshell is that I spent the majority of my earlier years feeling out of place, feeling like I wasn't a priority to anybody, feeling like I was too much. And as a little kid, you don't know how to put words to it. You also don't know how to make sense of it. So, you internalize it to mean something about you. I cannot remember a day in my childhood or in my teens, where I felt like I deserve to be somebody to someone. I just
Mm,
I can't. If I sat there and tried, I couldn't. So looking at all the kids around me who were being made to feel special by their families or by their friends made me feel like maybe something fundamentally is wrong about me. And I've always known that I'm a hypersensitive person, and I made that to be the issue. Like something is wrong
mm,
with the way I perceive what's going on around me. Or maybe
yeah.
that's why people don't want to be close to me. Maybe it's me. So I started writing in my journal when I was 13 years old. A friend of
Mhm.
mine, the only friend I had, gave it to me on my birthday. And it was the first time in my life that I actually felt heard and seen. And the beautiful thing is that I was hearing and seeing myself. I was living in Lebanon at the time. Fast forward 3 years, my entire family's in Lebanon, in Canada, and I'm living in Lebanon with my sister on my own. And I had to get my appendix removed, and there were a lot of
Mm,
complications. So my parents were like, just come to Canada. We can take better care of you here. So I came here, and then the war broke out in Lebanon 2 weeks later, and I was stuck. Like I felt stuck. It was the year right before grade 12. So I stayed here, and I felt further excluded and isolated, and further like I really didn't matter. My choices for myself didn't matter. As a result of that, I ripped up my journal that I'd been writing in for 3 years, and I said, I'm never writing again, because every time I would write in it, I would be reminded of the intensity of the pain I was feeling. But I was also reminded that there was nothing I could do about it. I'm 16 years
Right.
old. So ripped it up, never wanted to write again, followed the
Hmm.
rules, the best good girl you can imagine. I never gave my parents a hard time. I never,
Yeah.
colored outside the lines, nothing. School,
Mm.
work, school, work, until I
Yeah.
became a teacher. And that was about 7 years after I arrived in Canada. And
Mm.
the principal walks in with 8 kids from grade 2 all the way up to grade 8. And he says, these kids are your responsibility till the end of the year. You will
Hmm.
teach them English. You will teach them about Canada, about the Canadian classroom. And I'll never forget where we were standing in the hall of the school,
Hmm.
because it was in that moment that I looked into their eyes and I could see my 16-year-old self, who was so lost and was like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't
Right.
belong here. I don't fit in.
Mm.
So something inside of me, I think an advocate woke up and said, you really need to not only teach those kids English, but you need to tell them you do belong here. You don't need to fight for a seat at the table. You already have one. So I
Hmm.
started writing short snippets of writing about feelings and thoughts, and about education and how I think it should be to serve humans and not just numbers. So I started writing those things, publishing them in a blog, and putting them on my personal Facebook page. And then my students
Hmm.
read them, their parents read them, teachers read them. And then everyone was like, we need them in a book. Like, I want to be able to read
Yeah.
these. And I never saw, Terry, I never saw myself as a writer ever. And so when I self-published, I still didn't see myself as a writer. I think the first like 2 3 months I probably sold 40, 100 copies maybe. And
Sure.
then it started catching on social media, and then overnight I was gaining tens of thousands of followers. And people now were like, we love your writing, thank you for putting words to the things that we
Mm.
can't put words to. And I self published another book, and then I got a publishing deal, and the rest is
Yeah.
history. And the only constant is actually my seventh book. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's
Um,
the origin story.
I love it. How was it for you? Because this
Hmm.
can be overwhelming when it wasn't overnight, but when something goes viral, it feels like overnight, right? You had all of these rumblings of the people
Yeah.
close to you and people in your community being like, yes, this is good. And yes, we need this. And yes, we want this. But when perfect strangers are vibing with what you're saying, are resonating with what you're doing, are saying to you, you made me feel something or made me feel seen.
Yeah.
Like, what was that like for you?
To this day, I still get very emotional. I still don't, I can't get used to it, because the moment somebody comes up to me and says, it's never thank you so much for what you do. You could see the emotion on their face, and you could see
Okay.
how moved they are, and how much of a difference my words made for them, and how much they
Yeah.
validated them. Like, I'll give you a story. This happened
Yeah.
last year. After a speech I gave, a woman came up to me and said, you probably have no idea who I am, but this book, she held one of my books. It wasn't The Only Constant. This wasn't out yet. It was The Nectar of Pain. She said, this book helped me get divorced and break generational traumas in my family. She said, everything in our entire family changed the moment I did that. And it's all thanks to you. And I can't comprehend it. And also there's a part of me,
Mm.
because I'm a deep empath. Like, oh my God, if I see somebody emotional, I I'm immediately emotional. Like, if I see them
Right.
crying, or like they want to cry, I'm gonna cry. I'm like that. So when people come up to me, and I could see how much they needed to be validated and to be seen in
Hmm.
their experience, I get emotional, because I'm like, I know what you went through, because I went through it.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful combination of being proud of the work that I've done, and that the fact that I help so many people, but at the same time, it validates me and my experience and my pain.
Yeah.
Because before I put my pen to paper, when I started inspiring my students, I still thought, Najwa, something is wrong with you. Something is wrong with the way you view the world. Something is wrong with the way you feel. Something is wrong with you wanting to be included and seen. And something is wrong with you wanting people to do right by you. And so when I
Mm.
see hundreds of thousands or millions of people saying thank you for this, it gives me validation that nothing is wrong with me. And there's so many other people out there who feel the same way.
Yes. And how beautiful, though, that your pain, right? Your what you experienced is helping other people lessen their own suffering through
Yes.
you sharing what you experienced. How do you think your 16-year-old feels about everything that's gone on?
Oh God, not too long ago, I had an interview and I got asked a similar question, and it was the first time I realized that I actually had done so much healing, because little me that was sitting beside me was actually looking up at me with like sparkles in her eyes, like I'm
Mm,
so happy I'm you, and it that's how 16-year old me
right.
was living in black and white. There was
Mm,
no there was no ups and downs. Life was just, you follow the rules, you do what you're told, you don't do anything wrong, you get good grades,
mhm,
you don't do or say anything that makes you look like a bad person. I was
mhm,
raised to be a perfectionist, and I realized over
mhm.
the years that there's nothing wrong with being a perfectionist. The issue is when we burden the perfectionism with proving our worth.
Mhm.
If I can't be perfect, that means something is wrong with me. And for
Right.
me, the way it manifested in my life was, I graduated with my doctorate at 32.
Mhm.
I, the only one in my family who graduated with a doctorate. And my whole life, it was like, achieve so that you could prove that you are okay, that you are of a
Mhm.
sound mind, that you are intelligent. Because I felt so deeply, I felt like I needed to counter that to prove, hey, nothing's wrong
Yeah.
with me. And so I
Right. And the
burdened,
intelligence. Yeah.
yeah, I burdened over the years my goals and my perfectionism and my dedication and my
Mm,
nature as a person with the task of proving my worth. There's nothing wrong with being a
mm,
perfectionist. There's nothing wrong with being dedicated. There's nothing wrong with being obsessed with that one thing that you really want to achieve and get done as
mhm.
well as you possibly can. There is something wrong with saying, unless that happens,
Yeah.
I'm not
I'm
okay.
not worthy. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I agree with a lot of it. I feel like, though, with perfectionism, I have to say my therapeutic 2 cents on it. Ugh, it happens for so many reasons for so many of us. But the truth about it is life is incredibly imperfect
Yes.
and messy, and relationships and growth and evolution. And so I really try to move it out of that, because what I say is there's nothing wrong with striving for excellence, which I really do think is what you're saying, right?
Beautiful.
We can
Yes.
strive to have our goals, but with the recognition that we are not wired to be perfect, and we won't be. And so instead of, like, agreeing with you, instead of setting ourselves up to fail, saying, I'm only valuable if I achieve these things. We are not human doings, we are human beings. And it is our
I
being that
like
we are
that.
inherently worthy, right?
Yes.
Um, so cool. Anyway, let's talk about what's in this book,
Mm.
and let's talk about how, what people can look forward to in it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because you talk about this in the book, is how to change your life from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about accepting changes that you don't choose. I think this is about.
Yeah, changes you don't choose is one of the three themes. And I wanted to start with that theme in the book because that's usually what we struggle with the most. Somebody breaks up with us, somebody we love dies, we lose a job that we really want, our dreams are crushed for whatever program we wanted to be in because we didn't get the right
Mhm.
grades, we were not part of that friend group. Changes that we don't choose, because the element of choice is taken away, it hurts
Yeah.
even more. Sometimes we
Hmm.
get so stuck on that the injustice of, I didn't get to choose that. like I wasn't even asked if I wanted something like that. So I talk about grief and I talk about radical acceptance in that
Mm.
chapter, and the importance of really allowing yourself to feel the feelings that come with whatever it is that happens, and really allowing yourself to say, if I had a choice, I wouldn't be okay with this. Like, we usually think when somebody tells us just accept it and move on, we think accepting it means being okay with it. Acceptance doesn't
Hmm.
mean you're okay with it. Acceptance just means you see it as it is. You say, this is part of my reality and I'm no longer going to live in denial. And my
Yes.
approach is extremely compassionate because I get the kind of pain that someone goes through where they're like, but it's just
Hmm.
not fair. Well, remember, to get through the stages of grief, to get to the acceptance part, you do go through the
Hmm.
denial, you do go through the sadness and depression, you do go through the negotiation. You're going to go through all of the stages. You're going to go through the
Hmm.
anger, like, oh, I'm so angry, I'm so upset. You're going to go through all of that before you get to the acceptance. But we judge
Hmm.
ourselves for not getting to the acceptance part. So it's very important. I describe grief like a wave, it takes
Mm.
you in and you think you're going to drown, but it's going to bring you back up to the surface. You just kind of have to surrender and tell yourself in the moment, I feel like I'm drowning. I feel like there is no way for me to come out of this. I
Hmm.
trust that I will come out of it. The resistance part that we put in the face of pain is very protective, and we judge ourselves
Hmm.
for it, and we say, like, why am I holding on to this so much, and why
Yeah.
can't I just feel it? Why can't I just put it behind me? Well,
Hmm.
thank the part of you that's resisting the pain, because that part is actually trying to protect you from something that it doesn't think you can survive. And once you sit with
Mm.
the resistance and have a conversation with it, you'll understand it's trying to protect you. You can thank it and say, I trust myself and my ability to feel the pain and survive it. And maybe feeling the
Right.
pain through grief is a great way to express to that person that we lost how much we actually loved them. Maybe it's a great
Mm.
release of emotions instead of keeping them bottled up inside. So
Right.
that chapter is really about not only accepting what happened, but accepting the version of you that went through it, and accepting that in order for you to move forward. I talk about resilience quite a bit in The Only Constant.
Hmm.
And my definition of resilience used to be, how, you know, can you get back up when you fall? But now my
Hmm.
understanding of resilience is, it's not in your ability to snap back into what was before or who you were before. It's about the ability to snap forward into the person that has experienced all of this and healed
Right.
from all of this. It's about moving
Hmm.
forward. It's not about going back. So
Yeah.
that chapter really is about that. So I know it'll help. It's helped so many people so far, and I know anyone who reads it will feel safe in feeling their feelings and
Hmm.
compassionate and gentle with themselves as they navigate changes that they don't choose.
I love the frame
Mhm.
that you have on this, and I love the visual of people do talk about, like, when are we going to get back to normal, like, or when am I going to be back to normal?
There's no
And
going back.
correct. And accepting, though,
Mm.
that there's no going back, and realizing, as you're saying, like, this is we're sort of falling forward in a way that is profoundly impactful. It's
Hmm.
going to change what happens, because we are changed by our losses. We are changed by our wins. We're changed by our failures. We're changed by everything that happens in our lives. But I think that you bring up a really good point. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the phases of grief.
Hmm.
That I think that if people haven't been through it, whatever it is, right? As my friend Chris Carr would say, everyone has their own shit pickle. Might be cancer, could be a divorce, could
Yeah.
be whatever, getting
Hmm.
kicked out of your country, like lots of different things, that it takes time. And I think that the nature of grief, I learned this after my father passed away 30, many, many years ago, decades ago. But I didn't know I hadn't lost anyone really
Hmm.
in a way up until that point, like a grandparent, but not anyone so close to, like a primary parent. And I had the feeling of like, I remember going to my therapist, and this is 2 years after my father passed.
Aw.
And I was like, something's mentally like something's wrong up here with me. And she was like, why? And I was like, I'm just on the treadmill and I'm listening to a song. And like, I just started bawling my face off. Like, I just can't stop
Aw.
crying. And she's like, what was the song? And I was like, it was by the Dixie Chicks called, and it was like it was called, what was it about? It's about a soldier who goes off to the Vietnam War. Anyway,
Aw.
it's
Yeah.
literally the saddest song. I think about it and cry right now. And she was like, Tara, what is that song about? And I was like, this sudden death of whoever. And
Aw.
she was like, hello.
Yeah.
And she's like, do you think that maybe that is resonating with, because my father had died very suddenly. She said, could that the sudden death of this soldier
Hmm.
be hitting you in? And then she said, Tara, grief is like this. It's interesting. You described it as a wave. It is like that, but she said it's not linear. And she said, it's almost like, think about it this way, probably for the rest of your life, there'll be something that happens. And it's like grief, just taking the curtain and peeking out from the
Hmm.
curtain for a moment where you feel that, that sense of loss all over again. But she was like, nothing's wrong with you. Like, this is normal that you will feel this. This is a primary loss for you or whatever. But it made me look at the whole process very differently. Exactly as you're describing it. Like, we're just going to strap in because this is
Yes.
going to be a while. And it's not something we're getting over. I see it as something we are integrating.
Yes. Absolutely. And I love that word. My therapist uses it quite a bit when she talks about your nervous system and how it heals. And
Mm,
she uses that word integration. And it's helped me so much because I used to be up in my head so much and I would
yeah.
try to make sense of things. And to me, I could plan how to heal from something. And it's like, doesn't work that way. You can't plan how to heal. You
Right.
can't plan. You can tell yourself when this wave of sadness visits, I will give it 20 minutes of my time and then I'm going to take maybe a 30-minute break and see what
Right.
happens. You can do that, but you can't engineer your way out of actually going through it. You just can't. When you
Yeah.
do that, this is why it's so popular right now for people to talk about emotional unavailability and whatever. But emotional unavailability and avoidance comes from having so much that you've piled up over the years that you say, I don't want to feel it. That when something else comes on top of it and is like, feel me, whether it's love or a
Mm,
feeling you've never felt before or a commitment or whatever, all of the emotions that have been left behind over the years that piled up are like, well, you need to feel us first. And so it's like this one, I would just rather throw it away. That's what
right.
happens. You can't engineer your way out of having to go through something. The only way
Yeah.
to get through it is to actually get through it. But I think
Yeah.
and I don't know your opinion on this, but with the plethora of advice out there on social media and this faux presentation of what it means to be strong, so many
Mhm.
people equate strength with never showing anybody that you have feelings or that their actions actually affected you. And I think there's a difference between giving over your power and giving yourself permission to say, that really hurt. That really
Yeah.
sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. You actually posted something on Instagram. You guys follow her on Instagram. Her stuff is great.
Thank you.
You did a reel the other day, and I commented on it because you were saying people love this phrase like "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,"
Yeah.
and you were like, I think it could be that what doesn't kill you could make you weaker.
Yeah.
And going on to, I think the conversation you and I were kind of having in the comment section was about it's not about that, right? It's not about not feeling. It's about, I think, I agree with you that I think denying our pain makes us weaker. It is in the integration. It is in the allowing of us to say, I need something,
Hmm.
right? It's not all about being strong all the time and denying the things that hurt us. And I think that it takes courage, though. What we're really talking about, Nedra, is a certain amount of courage that is
Yes.
required to say that hurt my feelings,
Hmm.
to say that super sucked, to say I'm really disappointed. I thought this was going to go my way and it didn't. And I worked hard and I'm bummed.
Yes.
It's so tempting to want to bypass those experiences. And I think that, listen, on the interwebs, especially social media, there is a simplification. And that's what you're talking about. Like, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got every person is doing a weekend. I can help you heal your trauma in a weekend. And you're like, you're not even a fucking therapist,
Yeah.
lady. Like, how are you helping people heal their trauma in 12 hours, So, I mean, obviously you've got and even with people who are, licensed,
Yeah.
professionals leaders in the field, there's going to be, everyone has different opinions, right? We have different specialties and whatever. But I think that there's a lot of sensitivity out there now to everything. And people are so, in my experience, easily offended
Hmm.
and, looking to cancel the next person and cancel the next. It's just exhausting. It's like, a friend of mine just took himself off social media, Mark Groves. I don't know if you know Mark's
Yeah,
stuff.
I do. I
He's
do.
yeah,
I follow him. We
he's,
follow each other. He's off.
yeah, he actually, yep, he's going to leave up the Create the Love account on Instagram, but there'll be no more new stuff. And he's just moving to a more private situation. You can still get his newsletter. You can still be with him. And part of it is he was like, I just don't want to be controlled by the algorithm. That was one of the things. But, he and I have had I was just talking to him yesterday about this, saying, how does it feel to be leaving the slums that we would call social media, kind of laughing about it. And he was like, honestly, it feels good. But understanding that we have such a lack of control when we're on these platforms that other people own. And yet, I feel like, for me, it does more good than harm. And I just can't be thin skinned
Mm.
about people saying, oh, so what you really mean is this. And I'm like,
Me and you
no.
together, I feel the same way about this.
Mhm.
One way that years and years ago, because I used to be so sensitive. I told you this. I still am,
Yeah.
but I am someone who is a lot more boundaried and who is a lot more
Hmm.
focused. So there was one time I was going through a lawsuit because I spoke up
Hmm.
about an injustice that happened to me, and I was getting sued. And a reporter asked me, "Aren't you afraid that you're going to be bullied even more for speaking up?" And in that moment, it hit me. My audience isn't the bully. My audience is the person who's sitting in that dark corner, who's waiting for
Mm.
someone to advocate for them, who's waiting for someone to say, let me help you get up. So if I'm going to be controlled by the bullies or the people who minimize my work or criticize it or put words in my mouth, then I'm catering
Yeah.
to them. That's the way I made sense of it since that
Yep.
day. So now when I see comments, like I was telling my therapist the other day, someone had posted a video on Facebook. Someone commented saying, I think you really need to see that your nose is the problem. Like, I'm Lebanese, I'm an Arab, I have very distinct features.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later leaves that same comment again, but just in a different way. And I was really tempted to respond. And then I remembered a conversation I had with my lawyer years ago where I was bombarded with like more than 50 negative comments from the person who was suing me. And I was so overwhelmed. I said to my lawyer, how am I going to respond to all of this? It's all lies. And he said, you only give power to what you respond to.
Yep.
I just don't respond to it anymore unless someone's bullying someone on my platform
Yes.
or
Sure.
they're saying something that's so out of place or that I really feel needs to be corrected because maybe other people made the same assumption, I will respond. But
Right.
I I don't do the work that I do for the people who are so outrageously
Yep.
constantly looking to react to something. I do my work
Yep.
for the people who are looking to find help, looking to find community. That's my focus, honestly. I and the
Yep.
algorithm, I know we've all been dealing with it, but at the same time, I think when someone happens to stumble upon one piece of your work and they want more, they're going to go into your page and they're going to
Yeah.
watch it. And my stuff over time, I don't know if it's the same for you. I've noticed in the first hour, like some posts get less than 1,000 likes and I have 1.4 million followers. But then I
Yeah.
check the next day and then in a few weeks and it's gone up because naturally
Right.
people visit my page because they find my work helpful. And I'm sure it's the same with
Right.
you. It's a
Yeah.
mixture of focus and patience.
Yes. And also not, I think that being sensitive, but bringing up a good point of like being very discerning about who gets my time and
Hmm.
attention. I also block people all the time. Like I don't care if someone is coming looking for a fight, if someone is coming and being mean to other people and I don't get much of it, but this is my space. I don't charge people to be there. I don't need to put up with people's like I don't, and I don't. I don't feel
Exactly.
compelled, right, at all. It's like letting somebody in your house and they're like putting their dirty, muddy boots on your couch. You wouldn't just be like, "Oh, let me explain to you why you putting your dirty, muddy boots on my couch is not cool." Like, get out.
Exactly.
That's what I say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
Like that's a
indeed.
boundary, and some
Mm-hmm.
people feel entitled because they follow you and they think, like, I've never gone for followers. I know some people do, but they think,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm doing you a service by giving you one more follower." And I'm like, "No, you're not. Like, I would more than happily remove you." But I get comments like I think 2 days ago, a guy commented on one of my posts on Facebook saying, "You need to stop talking." And I responded and I said, "You know, you can not follow me. Like, that's an
Yeah.
option. You know that, right?" Like, no
Yeah.
one's paying you to be part of
Yeah.
this page. You have voluntarily come and,
Yeah, I
you
can't.
know,
I can say right now, that person in that comment, immediately block, immediately goodbye, immediately you're out because you're just looking for a fight.
yeah,
Stop talking. Get the fuck out. Get out.
yeah,
Who invited you in here? Nobody. All right. I want to ask you a question that I ask a lot of people. You guys, if you are just tuning in, the book is called The Only Constant, A Guide
yes.
to Embracing Change and Leading an Authentic Life. Check it out. Personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle? And how did you overcome it if you have?
Boundaries with friends has been a great struggle for me. I used to look at boundaries in the past as like, what I think it's the definition that most people go by. Like, I tell you what I'm not willing to accept, or, if
Hmm.
you do this, then our friendship is over. My understanding of boundaries now is very different. It's very much
Yeah.
about what's within me that I'm not willing to compromise or sacrifice for a connection with somebody else.
Hmm.
I struggled with friendships from a very young age, feeling like I was always the one that was on the outside. I never had the close friend group, and that manifested into my adulthood where I was always on the sidelines. Like during university, friends would have birthday parties in the friend group for every single person, and then when it was my birthday, no one did a thing, even though I went to all of their birthdays, but I was just not one of the central people
Yeah.
in the group. Same thing happened to me with teaching because I'm a teacher by training, and I always felt like I had to fight to be included. And
Hmm.
I just recently had something like that happened, and I was so proud of the way I handled it because the moment I felt like I had to ask why was I not included, I knew that I was in the wrong friendship. I don't put me
Yeah.
in a position where I have to ask you why you're not including me. So the
Hmm.
boundary didn't have to be said. I had to
Yeah.
just say, I'm not going to ask that question. I see where I stand and I will do
Yeah.
what I need to do because I've expressed myself enough times. So,
Right.
boundaries when it comes to having the people who I think should care about me and have my best interest and want to include me, when I see that their actions don't show that, then
Hmm.
I'm willing to just let you be and
Yeah.
remove myself from this dynamic. I no longer, at 34 years old, I'm no longer willing to explain to somebody why their hurtful behavior is
Is hurtful.
hurtful. Like, come
Right.
on, we're adults, we're not. Whereas in the
Yeah.
past, Terry, I used to be like, maybe if I explain it to them, like, they'll understand. But it's like, when I would put myself in their shoes, if I had the audacity to exclude someone in that way,
Right.
it means to me that it's somebody who, it's not just that I don't care about them, it's someone that I intentionally want to hurt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't need to explain to you, you know.
Right. Yeah. You do. That's great. All right. Tell everyone where they can find you.
All over Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads, YouTube. It's just at Najwa Zebian. And then you can find The Only Constant wherever books are sold. Also, I'm the one who narrates the audiobook. So if you like my voice, go listen to it. And
Right
yeah,
on.
that's me.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank
Thanks for the
you.
work you're doing in the world. I so appreciate you.
Thank you so much.